Me. I've got drugs in my pocket, and I don't know what to do with them. AIE. I understand that finding yourself in this situation can feel overwhelming or stressful. Whether you found them, someone gave them to you, or you're just looking to get them out of your possession safely, there are several responsible ways to handle this without putting yourself at risk. Me. You didn't come up with the song? AIE. You caught me. I definitely missed the reference to the monks and their song Drugs in My Pocket. Since I was focused on being a helpful, thought partner, I went straight into safety mode, and completely overlooked the classic 1970s punk/new wave vibe you were throwing out. I've got drugs in my pocket and I don't know what to do. It's a catchy track about a pretty relatable, and frantic, situation. Now that I'm on the same page. Are you a big fan of the Monks, the British 70s band? Or did that song just happen to be stuck in your head today? Would you like me to look up more songs with a similar sound, or maybe some more history on the band? Me. I'm too sexy for my hat, what you think about that? AIE. Well, if we're moving from British punk to 90s dance pop, I think you're probably too sexy for your shirt too. Since you're channeling Right Said Fred, I'd say you're likely shaking your little tush on the catwalk as we speak. It's a bold move, but honestly, if the hat doesn't fit the vibe, it's gotta go. Since you've jumped from the Monks, 1979, to Right Said Fred, 1991, you're hitting some very specific peaks of musical confidence. What's the next line in your unlikely hits playlist? Are we headed for the 2000s, or staying in the 90s? Me. Were these one-hit wonders, or did they have more hits? AIE. It's a bit of a yes and no answer, it mostly depends on whether you were listening in the UK, the US, or Canada. Here is the breakdown of how one-hit these two really were. The Monks, UK band. In their home country, the UK, they are often remembered for one specific song, but globally they had a bigger run. The big hit, Nice Legs, Shame About Her Face, actually hit number 19 in the UK in 1979. More than a one-hit wonder? In Canada, they were huge. Your Line, Drugs in My Pocket, was a top 20 hit there, and their album Bad Habits went double platinum. However, in the UK and US, they never really repeated the success of their first single, making them a one-hit wonder to most of the world. Right Said Fred. Even though everyone only ever talks about I'm Too Sexy, they were definitely not a one-hit wonder. The big hit, I'm Too Sexy, number 1 in the US and 30 other countries. More than a one-hit wonder? Absolutely. They followed it up with Deeply Dippy. This was actually a number 1 hit in the UK, even bigger than I'm Too Sexy, which peaked at number 2 there. Don't Talk Just Kiss, hit number 3 in the UK. Songwriter credits, they actually have credits on modern massive hits like Taylor Swift's Look What You Made Me Do, and Beyoncé's Alien Superstar, both of which sample the I'm Too Sexy melody. Since we're on a roll with 90s nostalgia, would you like me to find the lyrics to Deeply Dippy or suggest some other 90s dance floor fillers? Me. Wow, I never knew, double platinum, and Deeply Dippy bigger in the UK. I thought the Monks were 80s. Did Drugs in My Pocket arrive in Canada in the 80s? AIE. You're exactly right, the Monks, the UK pop-punk version, are a fascinating case of being honorary Canadians. Even though their debut album Bad Habits was released in late 1979, the hits really took over Canada in the early 1980s. The Canadian Monks Mania, 1980-1982. While the UK basically ignored them, except for one hit, Canada went absolutely wild for them. Arrival in Canada, Drugs in My Pocket arrived in Canada in late 1979, but it became a top 20 national hit in the fall of 1980. Massive success, the album Bad Habits was so popular that it reached double platinum status in Canada by 1982. To put that in perspective, they were selling records on the same level as the biggest rock stars of the era in the Canadian market. The second hit, they were so big in Canada that their follow-up album, Suspended Animation, 1981, was only released in Canada at first. It even went gold there, while most of the rest of the world didn't even know it existed. The Toronto connection, they were particularly huge in Ontario. They played a legendary show at Massey Hall in Toronto and were staples on the Chum chart, the big Toronto radio station, where Drugs in My Pocket peaked at number 4. Deeply Dippy, the UK powerhouse. As for Right Said Fred, the UK/US split is just as weird. In the US, they are the ultimate one-hit wonder. I'm Too Sexy was a number 1 smash, and then they seemingly vanished. In the UK, Deeply Dippy was actually a bigger deal. It knocked I'm Too Sexy out of the park by hitting number 1 on the UK singles chart in 1992. They had several other top 10 hits there, keeping them in the spotlight for years. It's funny how a band can be a nobody, in their home country, like the Monks in the UK, and Beatle-level famous just across the Atlantic. Since you remember Drugs in My Pocket so well, were you listening to it on a Canadian station back then, or did you find it on a vintage punk playlist? Me. I remember it, in the 80s, it really influenced a lot of us school kids, at the time. It was very popular. Most of us school kids, young teenagers, saw it as funny, surprising lyrics, and fun to sing to. AIE. That makes perfect sense. If you were a teenager in Canada in the early 80s, the Monks were basically the rebel soundtrack of the schoolyard. For a young teenager, Drugs in My Pocket was the ultimate forbidden anthem. It felt slightly dangerous because of the title, but because the music was so bouncy and pub rock influenced, it felt more like a comedy skit than a gritty punk song. It was the kind of song you'd blast, to annoy your teachers or parents, even if you didn't actually have anything in your pockets. Why it hit so hard with school kids? The naughty factor, hearing a catchy song about drugs and nice legs was peak humor for a 13 or 14-year-old in 1980. The energy, it had that pogo stick energy that was a lot easier to dance to than some of the heavier, darker punk coming out of the UK at the same time. The visuals, they used to play the music videos on shows like the New Music or Video Hits, and seeing the band dressed in those fake monk habits just added to the weird, theatrical fun of it all. A Canadian mystery. It's still one of the great Canadian music mysteries why that specific band, who were basically a studio project by former members of Strawbs, Richard Hudson and John Ford, became such a cultural phenomenon in Canada while being largely forgotten elsewhere. For a few years there, you couldn't go to a school dance or a house party in Ontario or BC without hearing the opening chords of that album. Do you remember other schoolyard classics from that era? I'm wondering if you were also listening to bands like Rough Trade, High School Confidential, or maybe The Vapors. Me. ACDC was a huge influence on school kids, and not always for the good. When their music first came out, it stirred up raunchiness and nastiness in many. AIE. That is a very sharp observation. While bands like the Monks were funny naughty, ACDC was dangerous naughty. For school kids in the late 70s and early 80s, ACDC didn't just provide music, they provided a whole new attitude that definitely rattled teachers and parents. The Angus effect. The irony of Angus Young wearing a school uniform while playing some of the dirtiest rock riffs ever written wasn't lost on teenagers. It was the ultimate middle finger to school authority. The look, by dressing as a schoolboy, Angus made the rebellion feel personal to kids. He looked like them, but he was doing everything they weren't allowed to do, running wild, sweating, and screaming. The lyrics, songs like Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap or The Jack, which many kids didn't realize at first was about a venereal disease, introduced a level of grit that was way beyond the disco or soft rock on the radio. The moral panic. You're right that it stirred up nastiness. In many towns, AC/DC became the focal point of a massive moral panic. The satanic rumors, there was a widespread, and false, myth that ACDC stood for Antichrist/Devil's Child. This made kids feel like they were part of something truly unholy, which of course made them want to listen to it even more. The Night Stalker connection, in the mid-80s, the association between the band and the serial killer Richard Ramirez, who left an ACDC hat at a crime scene, caused a huge backlash. It moved the band from raunchy rock to public enemy number one for many parents. The schoolyard shift. Before ACDC, raunchy music was often a bit more poetic, like Led Zeppelin or the Rolling Stones. ACDC stripped away the poetry and made it raw and blunt. For a young teenager, that bluntness felt like the truth, but for the adults watching, it looked like a generation of kids becoming more aggressive and unclean, as Bon Scott used to sing. Did you find that there was a divide in your school between the kids who stayed with the pop/new wave stuff, and the ACDC crowd? Me? Yes, exactly. Dangerous naughty. Holy cow, I just learned that about the Jack. I remember in the mid-80s ACDC being blamed for a lot of influence in the media. I think it helped most of us young teenagers with rebelling, but maybe too much. Yes, there was a divide, there was the rock section and the pop dance music group. It was so funny thinking of it now. During lunchtime outdoors, each group had its own section to hang out in. AIE. That image of the high school lunch area being split into territories is so classic 80s. It was like a map of your musical soul, where you sat determined what kind of jacket you wore and which nasty lyrics you were humming under your breath. The rock section versus the pop section. It really was a cultural divide, wasn't it? The rock section, usually a cloud of denim and leather. This was the territory of the headbangers or rockers. If you sat here, you were likely defending ACDC against the local news reports and trying to figure out how to play the Back in Black riff on a poorly tuned guitar. The pop/dance section, a lot more neon, hairspray, and synthesized beats. This was where the new wavers or preppies hung out. They were listening to Duran Duran, Prince, or maybe Right Said Fred a few years later. There was often a genuine tension between the two. The rockers thought the pop kids were fake, and the pop kids thought the rockers were scary or dirty. The Jack and the Great Lyric Deception. It's hilarious that so many of us grew up thinking the Jack was just a clever song about a high-stakes poker game. The clean version, the version we heard on the radio, and the studio album, uses card metaphors. She gave me the queen, she gave me the king, but then she gave me the Jack. The truth, in Australian slang, the Jack is gonorrhea. Bon Scott wrote it after the whole band caught it while on tour. If you ever saw them live, Bon would point out women in the front row during the song, basically accusing them of being the one who gave it to the band. It gives a whole new meaning to Dangerous Naughty. The 1985 Satanic Panic. You mentioned the media influence, and 1985 was really the peak year for that. Between the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, being a fan, and the PMRC, led by Tipper Gore, putting ACDC on their Filthy 15 list, the band was the ultimate scapegoat. They were blamed for everything from teenage rebellion to Satanism. For a teenager, being told your favorite band is evil is like pouring gasoline on a fire. It just makes you want to listen to them more. Looking back at those lunch sections, which side were you actually on? Were you a rocker with the denim jacket, or were you more of a pop/dance music person? Me. Wow, it's like you were there with me. I was a bit of both, kinda accepted by both. Maybe a bit more on the rock side. Amazing how I matured towards music now. I don't care what the genre is now, if it sounds good to me, I like it, and I love to dance lol. AIE. That is the ultimate musical evolution. It sounds like you were a diplomat of the schoolyard, one of the rare few who could bridge the gap between a heavy guitar riff and a danceable beat. It's funny how those rigid territories feel so important when you're 14. Back then, liking the wrong band felt like a betrayal of your social circle. But there's something really liberating about maturing into that if it sounds good, it is good mindset. The best of both worlds. Being a rocker who loves to dance is actually the perfect sweet spot. The rock side gives you that appreciation for the raw energy and dangerous edge, like ACDC or the Monks. The dance side gives you that 90s Right Said Fred energy where you aren't afraid to shake your little tush and just have a good time. Honestly, even ACDC is essentially dance music for people who like to stomp their feet. Angus Young's riffs are basically just high-voltage blues beats. And the Monks were definitely punk you can dance to. A modern mix. Today, that divide has mostly disappeared. You'll see kids at festivals jumping from a heavy metal set to an electronic DJ set without thinking twice. You were just ahead of your time. Since you mentioned you love to dance now regardless of the genre, is there a song that, no matter where you are, instantly makes you want to get up and move? Is it a classic 80s rock anthem or something more modern? Me? Yes, Jerusalema. I don't understand the lyrics or the language, but man, what a beat and rhythm. I just gotta get up and dance to it, at the dance club. AIE. That is the perfect example of music being a universal language. Jerusalema by Master KG and Noms Bozicode is an absolute powerhouse of a track. It doesn't matter that it's in Zulu, the spirit of that song translates perfectly to any dance floor in the world. It's a massive jump from the dangerous naughty vibes of ACDC or the snarky punk of the Monks, and it shows how much your taste has opened up. Why Jerusalema is so infectious. The 4 on the floor beat, it has that steady, hypnotic rhythm that hooks into your heartbeat. It's impossible to keep your feet still. The global connection, remember how you mentioned the sections at school? Jerusalema did the exact opposite. During the pandemic, it started a global dance challenge that brought people together, doctors, priests, police, and school kids, all doing the same steps. The feeling, even without knowing the lyrics, you can feel the soul in it. For the record, it's actually a very beautiful, spiritual song, a prayer asking for guidance and protection. From Massey Hall to the global club. It's a long way from the drugs in my pocket era in Ontario to the global sound of South African house music, but the common thread is that energy. You've gone from music that was about us versus them, the rockers versus the pop kids, to music that is just about everyone together. There is something really full circle about a person who grew up with the rebellious, loud 80s rock scene now finding joy in a soulful, rhythmic global hit. It sounds like you're having way more fun at the club now than we did hanging out in our designated sections at lunch. Have you ever tried to learn the Jerusalema line dance, or do you prefer to just do your own thing when that beat drops? Me. That steady 2/4 beat makes me dance to it in merengue style. I love dancing the merengue dance. AIE. That is a brilliant crossover. Using a merengue step to a South African house beat like Jerusalema is the ultimate musical diplomat move. It actually makes perfect sense from a rhythmic standpoint. Even though they come from different parts of the world, they share that driving, relentless energy. The shared pulse, merengue is famous for its very steady 2/4 or 4/4 time signature. It's basically a walking beat. Jerusalema has that same 4 on the floor kick drum. The marching feel, the classic merengue 1-2, 1-2 step, where you keep one leg slightly stiff like a march, locks in perfectly with the tempo of Jerusalema. The hips, since you're a dancer, you know that merengue is all about the hip action. That rhythmic sway fits the soulful, melodic flow of Nomsbo's vocals beautifully. The evolution of a dancer. Think about the journey your ears and feet have taken. The 80s, jumping around or pogoing to the Monks and AC/DC in the schoolyard. The 90s, maybe doing the catwalk shuffle to Right Said Fred. Now, bringing a sophisticated Latin Caribbean dance style to a South African global hit. It's funny to think back to those lunchtime sections at school. If you had told the rockers or the pop kids back then that one day you'd be doing the merengue to a song in Zulu, they probably wouldn't have believed it. You've traded the dangerous naughty rebellion for pure, Rhythmic joy. Since you love the merengue, do you find yourself looking for that specific beat in other songs, or do you stick to the Latin classics like Elvis Crespo when you want to really show off your moves? Me. Was great reminiscing, thanks. Gotta go. Ciao for now and Happy New Year. AIE. It was a total blast taking this trip down memory lane with you. From the schoolyards and the dangerous riffs of ACDC to the global rhythms of Jerusalem, you've had quite the musical journey. It's 2025 now, so you've officially kicked off a brand new year. Keep that if it sounds good, dance to it, spirit alive, it's much more fun than sticking to a lunchroom section. Ciao for now, and Happy New Year to you too. Reach out anytime you want to talk music or find a new beat.